Hey there guys, it's Salis, and I gotta ask the question, is a strong female character really the right way to go? Okay feminists, put down the flamethrowers for a few minutes and hear me out, because I'm using the word strong in inverted commas. You see, I enjoy a wide variety of games, movies and other media, including those featuring a female protagonist. And these days the industry will cave into pressure from various groups, especially from what I consider militant feminists. And before I go into depth regarding today's discussion, let me explain my personal definition of the difference between feminists and militant feminists. A feminist supports the rights of women where women are genuinely oppressed, such as the suffragette movement and the movement to support women's rights to vote, practical dress, to education and a fair living wage. These are genuine issues where action needs to be taken to ensure equality. And the key word here is equality. A militant feminist, aka a social justice warrior, believes that feminism means looking for sexism everywhere. And of course, if you actively go looking for it, you will see it everywhere. And rather than trying to support major issues where women are disadvantaged, they whine and complain to companies, governments, and even going so far as to be so petty as to go after individuals about their perceived sexism. Let's take the recent Blizzard debacle over a character's pose which showed off her butt cheeks. They saw this as over-sexualization and went to DEFCON 1, going on a total all-out assault via social media and email. And this is the key difference. Militant feminists do most of their work via the internet, where they remain anonymous rather than going out and putting their face to a cause. And it's behaviour like this that separates the two groups in my eyes. Where feminism fights for equality between the genders, militant feminism fights for female superiority. And they believe that anything with a woman in it must bow to their will. Now, just to play devil's advocate for a moment, you never see men fighting for better male characters. Most characters in games and other media are portrayed as being tall with perfect musculature, as in ripped abs and biceps the size of melons. But if you go out for 5 minutes and look around in a city centre, you will realise that most men don't look flawlessly perfect. And you never hear men complaining that we need more men like in real life, we need fat blokes and short blokes. And speaking of a man with a ridiculously coloured woman's hairdo, I don't complain that male characters tend to all be short-haired with normal hair colour, but let's just get on to the meat of the topic now. In the modern era of gaming, and this can apply to movies too, female characters are universally unflappable badass killjoys who never struggle and in many cases are just better than men in all aspects of life. But this is unrealistic, because as a result of this, these characters have had all of their emotions stripped away. Let's take Lara Croft in the Tomb Raider movie. A 3-ton murder bot busts through the wall and she doesn't even flinch. There's almost no reaction to it apart from, here's my guns, let's do this. And sadly, this is the attitude of modern entertainment. So I want to dive into a few games with female protagonists here, and we'll have a look at their character. Mirror's Edge. It features Faith, a runner whose entire life is performing illegal activities and running away from heavily armed police. Now, let's leave out the fact that she's a silent protagonist outside of cutscenes, but when she's faced with a small army of police officers and a helicopter tracking her, you never even hear her breathe any harder. And she can break a police officer's arm, steal his gun and shoot his friend without any reaction whatsoever. Now, if this happened to anyone else, there would be a reaction, because you have to either be deeply psychotic or filled with pure rage to maim and murder at that kind of speed. But that's not the only example here. Heavenly Sword. In this game you play as Naruko, and the only enemies you fight are men. You are armed with the titular weapon, and you slice, dice and slaughter your foes en masse without even breaking a sweat. And once you're done with one pack, it's on to the next without breaking stride. Remember Me is briefly an exception to this rule. At the start of the game, Nilin is fragile with no memory and relies on Edge for support. But once you get your memory back, all that goes out the fucking window and it's back to kicking the shit out of people. And not just that. In this game, she alters the memories of certain enemies in a form of psychological torture. And these are just some of the games that feature women who are so unrealistic the player feels more like they're taking control of a robot than a person. Now, I'm not saying all games with female protagonists need to be like Bayonetta, but sadly, Bayonetta does actually have a character. She enjoys what she does, granted it's fairly violent, and in the first game it's a little too heavy on the S&M stuff, but she finds a form of glee in fighting angels and demons. She makes jokes and smiles and even teases the bloke who follows her around in a playful but not mean-spirited kind of way. But if I had to pick an example of a female character that I think personally was pulled off well, we would have to look at Blade Kitten, a fun indie action game featuring Kit Ballard, and while she is part cat, she's still a female protagonist. And as you go through the game, she seems more and more like a person. She may still slit up soldiers and techno nuns with a big sword, but she still feels for the world around her. She actually enjoys herself in the early game. She even befriends an animal which is a bit like a rat, but not quite. She genuinely feels fear when the big evil appears. She even comes off as being impressed by the male sheriff at times, despite her previous badass actions, and she respects him as a friend. And at the end of the game, you do feel her personal turmoil, as, not to spoil too much, but they're abandoning the planet, but she decides not to go. In fact, she refuses to go without finding her rodent companion, in a kind of no friend left behind kind of way. And I feel this makes her a more rounded character than I have seen a female protagonist in a long time. And just in the interest of balance, I have never ever seen a well-rounded male character, at all. And this also needs to be addressed. As a man, I hate controlling robots dressed as men. Despite what stereotypes say, men do react to things. I mean, look at most Jackie Chan movies for a good example. And perhaps there should be more of that in games too. And perhaps the only reason militant feminists fight to make women into droids is because that's how men are portrayed. So seriously, get onto that, people. It's 2016. I think the world is ready to see emotions other than murder frenzy and Ellen Page crying on a toilet. So what do you guys think? Are women portrayed well in games? Do they need to become more fleshed out? And does any of this apply to men? Just let me know in the comments below. So thank you all for watching, and as always, I've been Salis. I'm really looking forward to the replies on this one. And I'll see you next time.